All right.
Syed, go.
So today on the podcast, we have a good friend to me and a great member of Team GPT, Al Robb. He is a two-time national, I think, bench champion, right?
Bench and junior, but
bench and junior champion, and a registered dietitian. So, Al, do you want to give a little sort of background on yourself and why we think you're the perfect person to have on this podcast about nutrition?
Sure. So I've been a dietitian for a little under 4 years now. I went to school at University of Rhode Island. Graduated from there. I did my dietetic internship. Every dietitian has to do basically 4 years of school plus a fifth year as a usually unpaid intern, and then pass an exam before you can actually become registered. So I did that through Danbury Hospital in Connecticut. I worked at Waterbury Hospital for 2.5-ish years, a couple of years, before I took a position, an internship with the Tampa Bay Rays, and that was last year. Now this year, I'm currently a minor league dietitian with the Rays. So I've been in a couple different settings doing this nutrition stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I said to you right before we started recording, I wanted to kind of push that because there's so many people out there that are nutritionists, and it takes nothing to be a nutritionist. Right now, Syed and I are both nutritionists.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. There's people that know a lot about how to coach people and a lot about nutrition, but you have put the time, the effort, the money into becoming recognized to actually do this, as a living.
I mean, there's a lot of nutritionists, who are not actually registered dietitians that, know their stuff, and they have a lot more, research experience or anything like that than I do. But I think that the registered dietitian part kind of gives us the ability to say we know how to, we might not necessarily, know more, but we have the ability to say, basically keep everybody safe. We're not doing anything that's going to harm them, which we see with a lot of people that are doing, Instagram coaching. They're, DM me for coaching. They can just give a person, hey, eat 1,000 calories a day. You're going to lose weight. That's not doing something that's going to be sustainable, and obviously not a healthy thing either.
Right. And a big one with that too is like, someone like me, so I'm a type 1 diabetic, I can waive anything, but and work with anyone, but really someone who's just a nutritionist that doesn't have the correct certifications like you do should not be working with someone like me, because I have a medical issue. It is not just eat less, move more. They could tell me to jack up my carbohydrates to perform better, and then my sugar goes to shit, and it actually makes it worse. Maybe I get sick from it. So
even dietitians, like, if it's something that I'm not comfortable with or have not experienced before, I would refer out. I'm not like, I've worked with some type 1 diabetics before. I'm certainly no expert in that condition, but for some certain things, especially, eating disorders, if those are really in-depth conditions, then dietitians should be referring out to specialists. It's not something that we, if we're not comfortable with it, or if we don't have a lot of experience, it shouldn't be something that we're, trying and experimenting with the person.
Right. But again, that's something that, like, you went to school for these things where, like I said, someone who's just saying I'm a nutritionist might have zero knowledge.
Right.
And maybe they're doing a couple Google searches to figure out what they should be doing for someone. And that's a little scary.
It can be scary. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we'll kind of try to lead into some of the questions we talked about. So, I mean, I know, the bro model has always been eat at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And it works. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong against it. But as a dietitian, and if you're working, like, we're going to talk more in the realm of powerlifters. We're going to stay away from, type 1 diabetics or someone with an eating disorder. But as a powerlifter, someone who's trying to get stronger, probably leaner, probably bigger, we'll start with protein. How would you go about coaching someone?
So protein is one of the ones that's basically one of the macronutrients that basically stays the same. It's not something that's really going to be periodizing, adjusting up or down. There's a lot of new research coming out, a lot of old research that says a lot of different things. I'm more in the mindset of everything is probably moderate, and that's what a lot of the research is saying. We certainly don't need to jack up, people are consuming multiple grams per pound, and that's just unbelievably high. And it doesn't leave any room for other nutrients. There's things other than protein. We need things other than protein in our diet. A kind of good rule of thumb to shoot for is about 1.7 to 2 grams per kilo. I do everything in kilograms. That's what a lot of the research is anyway. So
it's fine.
Yeah, 1.7 to 2 grams per kilogram is pretty good and kind of on the higher end. For the most part, I would say most people should not be above that. There are certain times where you can consume more than that. Specifically, if you are in periods of really heavy training, or if you are trying to lean out, lose some fat, and try and maintain the muscle, then you might have a little bit, a short period of time with higher amounts of protein. But for the most part, that kind of 2.0 grams per kilogram is not necessarily a ceiling, but any higher than that is usually not as effective. So,
like you said, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So, and then in terms of, consuming that throughout the day, I know, back in the day, it was always, you have to make sure that you're loading in the protein after your workout, that anabolic window. But now the majority of the research is saying that it basically needs to be consistent throughout the day. So depending on the person, obviously smaller people are going to need less protein, bigger people need a little bit more, but that really should be, somewhere in the 20 to about 40 grams of protein per meal every 3 to 5 hours or so is kind of a general guideline. Obviously things are very specific and would change with certain people, but that's kind of a general guideline is around 30 grams of protein every 3 to 5 hours throughout the day.
So I guess I just said, before we started recording, I saw some research that they said, as low as 0.62 grams per pound, which comes out to be like 1.4 per kilo, something like that. Where you were just saying 1.7 to 2 per kilo. I mean, so that's a lot lower than I think a lot of people are probably used to, which I'm with you on that. We've talked about this before. I agree with you on that. I'm the same. I agree with keeping it pretty standard throughout the day. Having that big protein spike after your workout probably isn't that necessary. But I'm also not that worried about people. Like if you do have that one huge protein meal, the thought that you're wasting it.
No, yeah.
That your body can't process it. That's silly.
The thing that happens is basically once you get past a certain threshold, and it's different in everybody, is that specifically leucine, which is the real, I guess you'd say the anabolic kind of mediator, it's really the most important essential amino acid. And once we get past that certain threshold, that begins to be oxidized and is not really doing its purpose. Its purpose is to help build muscle and, maintain muscle and do a lot of other things. But once we get past that certain threshold, your body is not utilizing it the way it should be. So there is, it's kind of a point of diminishing returns. It's not going to give you as much of a benefit as, that first 30 or first 40 or whatever it may be.
That was exactly what I was going to say is diminishing returns. Is at some point, more is not better. We could apply that to probably everything that we talk about in powerlifting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big one because, people, it's the bodybuilding thing, the old school, like I said, you got to eat more protein.
Load it up.
Right. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like I said, if you're, maybe if you're trying to cut weight, you're eating a little more protein, it keeps you satiated. So you're not as hungry. So you're not going to eat as much other stuff. That's maybe a good thing. But otherwise, you think about, I've coached you for several years. When you're doing a powerlifting program where you're lifting, maybe 1 or 2 heavy exercises per program, and then you're doing somewhere between 4 and 8 assistance exercises where you're trying to get, more muscular growth, muscular endurance. Like what would you rather see than just pumping protein in all day?
Well, it goes back to what I said before. It's kind of my philosophy for the most part is everything in moderation. And that's usually referring to, like, if you want to have a piece of pizza every now and then, it's not going to kill you. But, we need to have protein, we need to have carbohydrates, we need to have fat, we need to have all the other micronutrients that come along with it. So we're not really focusing on one main thing. If, that's one of your personal goals that you struggle with, and you struggle with getting enough protein, then that can be, one of your main focuses. But as a whole, we need to be aware of all of the different nutrients that we need in our diet, both for health purposes and performance purposes, because, that's something that we don't want to sacrifice. We don't want to sacrifice health for, a couple weeks prior to a powerlifting meet. It's not,
Which I think, so for me, I think that leads kind of into where, several years ago, the idea of eating paleo or keto, whatever you want to think of it as, basically low carb, to try to be leaner, cut back on a lot of the, the grains and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think the good thing is it got people to eat some different things. It got people to eat some real fat. On the other hand, the problem was people started crushing fat,
right? And
they were just living off of protein and fat. And you want some carbs for performance.
They're skipping over whole food groups. They're completely eliminating. I think dairy is one of the ones that's completely eliminated. And then carbs, I think they're still getting, depending on what style that they're doing, they're still getting some in, but they're really not getting very much. And if it's someone who's doing, CrossFit is typically the big crowd that does it. And, they're working their butts off for, a couple hours a day. Sometimes they need carbohydrates. And the thing is that the difference is there with strength, with specifically strength athletes like powerlifters, we need our glycogen stores, to an extent, but they don't need to be topped off like they would if you were doing, if you were playing soccer or basketball and running up and down a field or court all day. So, but with CrossFit, they're doing a lot more of that endurance aerobic style stuff, even though they're, mixing it in with the strength component as well. So they need a lot more carbs than, obviously based on body weight, everything's going to be different, but they need relatively more carbohydrates than most just plain strength athletes who are really, doing a couple reps of an exercise and sitting down for 3 to 5 or 7 or 10 minutes, depending on how long they're talking to whoever their training partners are. So it really, it's going to depend on your sport and your goal. But like I said, it's really, everything should be in moderation. There's no reason to be completely eliminating a food group, unless there's specific health purpose, reasons that it's happening. But as a whole, like there's benefits, there's micronutrients that comes with those groups or foods that you're eliminating. So really there's, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, both from a health purpose and a performance purpose.
Well, I think that so again, and I'm going to kind of push you around a little bit in here, but low carb, if you're not doing a lot of stuff, is probably not a bad thing. If you're not expelling a lot of energy, then you probably don't need as many carbs as someone who's powerlifting, or as you said, someone who's maybe doing CrossFit who's expelling even more energy. So they probably went the wrong way and had actually, cut out carbs very low, and ended up going, like I said, going toward dumping coconut oil into their coffee. And yeah, it's cool. It's calories, it's getting some energy, but it's not the most efficient. So, that could be tough. But on the other hand, you've got I think coming over from the bodybuilding world where you've got some refeed days where some powerlifters are following more of those, the nutrition cycling, the carb cycling in particular, on days maybe that we're not training that hard, their carbs are pretty low, but maybe on a high volume day, some of these guys are pumping 700 carbs in a day. Which I get the idea behind it, but I'm saying, cause I like your idea of the moderation.
Right.
I think that's one.
I think those days, they may have their days depending on if it's if they're in a really high volume portion of their cycle, or if it's an extremely high volume day. I know I don't think there's any days that you specifically give people that would require that much. But, you know, as a general rule, you have your higher volume days and you have your lower volume days, and your athletes know who they are or know what days are what. And so like you said, certain days are going to require a larger amount of carbs. Certain days are not going to be as much. I didn't leave my house today or my apartment today. I didn't need many carbohydrates. It's, you know, it's as simple as that. And there's still, you know, I'm still getting in my, you know, nutrients in plenty of other foods, but in terms of what I expended today, it's not that much. So it would be the same thing for any other strength athlete or really any other athlete. If you're moving around a lot and you're burning a lot of energy, our body's preferred fuel source is glucose, which comes from carbohydrates. So it would make sense that we need to be consuming a larger amount throughout the day.
Yeah. So how do you feel like on the opposite end? Then there are some pretty popular diet programs that will cut fat. That's usually their first one to go because if you don't know much about nutrition, fat has 9 calories per gram, carbs and protein only have 4. So cutting 1 gram of fat is obviously going to have a bigger caloric difference than cutting out protein or carbs. But I mean, I've seen some of these as low as, you know, like 10% of your total calories from carbs. And, you know, you get a guy who's eating 3,000 calories a day, you know, you're talking about eating like 30 grams of fat, 35 grams of fat. Now, again, they're keeping their carbs high for performance. They're getting their protein in for muscle building and repair and everything. But now our fat is down. How do you kind of feel about that one?
So that one, it's kind of similar. It has its time and place to an extent. As a general rule, fat doesn't really have a whole lot of an important role for power athletes. You know, protein has its defined role. Carbs have its defined role. Fat, like you said, one of the big benefits is that it's high in calories. So if you're trying to move up a weight class, or if you're struggling to put weight on or maintain weight, then that would be a great thing to include. You know, the other benefits really come from more of the health side of things, where they provide, you know, essential fatty acids that our body needs, our omega-3s, which our body, you know, are heart healthy fats. And then they also allow for the absorption of fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. So we certainly still need some fat. I do understand limiting it to an extent because, like I said, it's not going to provide a lot of performance related benefits, but the threshold is typically about 20% of your total calories. So anything below that, we try and avoid going below that in terms of fat intake. The exception being if you are carb loading, which usually is reserved for endurance athletes, so it doesn't really apply for this population, or if you're cutting weight. So if you're in, you know, the last couple of days, you know, it's Wednesday and your meet is on Saturday and you're finishing up a weight cut, then it would be okay. Typically we say about up to 72 hours or so to consume less fat than that 20% threshold. And then after that, we, you know, want to kick it back up to its normal intake, just so you're not really seeing any of those negative side effects that would come along with it. Because if you're doing, you know, that really low, like you said, if someone was doing consuming 10% of their calories from fat for an extended period of time, they're going to see, you know, a lot of low energy availability, which is going to hurt their retaining their muscle mass. It's going to cause some menstrual dysfunction, hormone disturbances. It's going to lead to bone density issues. There's a lot of things that can occur because of that very low fat diet, if it's something that's followed for more than a couple days at a time. So again, it goes back to the moderation. If it's done infrequently, okay. If it's done for a short period of time, okay. But for the most part, as a general rule, it shouldn't be that low. It should be, you know, minimum about 20% of your overall calorie intake.
I like that. I mean, I think of like when I was in high school and the only real information out was like the bodybuilding magazines. And I'm pretty sure for probably about a year leading up into my college career for baseball, trying to get in better shape, I basically had like chicken and broccoli.
You just pounded the protein.
Just pounded protein and like, you know, kept the carbs were real low, but fat was like, I'm not even sure fat existed. because it was always like, skinless chicken breast. And I know like for
grams a day.
At least for me, like when my joints would hurt, like I just felt like creaky, and like I was like 18. Like I'm creaky now, but like at 18, you shouldn't like you shouldn't feel like crap at 18. Like, but it was just because I think I'm not even sure. Like I probably had 15 grams of fat a day.
Yeah, and that's another one of the health, and that one is actually more related to performance than most of the other things that I mentioned. That's directly related to performance. If you feel, if your shoulder and elbow feels like shit, you're not going to throw that well that day.
Right. So, I mean, and I like one of the reasons that I wanted you to work with the team, and, because you had started doing nutrition coaching outside of the clinical setting, was with us, with some of our athletes, was that I know that, like I said from before, you've got that background that is more advanced than most people. And as you've been saying over and over, like the moderation, I agree with you on that. I think just kind of staying the line and with, small ups and downs is a lot better than just going, full bore one way, which I think powerlifters and athletes in general want to do that. People read something and like, oh my God, this works. And they go low carb and,
they're looking for the magic pill or the most effective thing, where really the most effective thing is small, consistent changes that you can sustain for a long period of time.
Right. And I think one of the things I liked a lot when you started coaching some of our athletes was that you were asking how much fiber they were getting. And I remember reading like years ago that, the average American only gets like 10 or 12 grams of fiber a day, where they're supposed to be getting like 25 to 35.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, wow. And then I talked to you about it. And then I read, as a type 1 diabetic, I'm supposed to be eating even more than that. And I'm like, I'm not even close. And I was thinking about it, and I can't remember another nutrition coach even really talking about fiber when it comes to, it's always protein, carbs, and fat. Right. But fiber has a huge play on a lot of these things. And I know I'm pushing you off our original topics, but like, you were the first one I think that like really made me start thinking about fiber again and having more people use it. Because I mean, like people were, they just weren't getting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that's kind of not, like you said, it's not the front of our minds when it comes to performance, but when it comes to being healthy, and really the majority of fiber containing foods, so vegetables, whole grains, fruits, those types of things are going to have a lot of the micronutrients that we need as well. So you're kind of getting, it's two birds, one stone type of a thing, where you're getting in that fiber, which is helping to, provide some healthy bacteria in your gut. It's helping to benefit that gut microbiome, and it help your digestion and your absorption of nutrients. And with those same foods, you're also getting, your vitamin C, your B vitamins, your, iron, your zinc, your things that you might not be getting as much of normally if you're just focusing on protein, carbs, fat. And, I think that is something that it's not necessarily going to make, monumental differences, but if it helps you to feel better and it helps you to just, not feel as sluggish, because, with fiber, it helps to decrease the absorption time of our glucose, or decrease the digestion, time. So, increase the digestion time. So it's slower, what I'm trying to say. It's a slower release of glucose. So that means that we're not going to have that quick spike in blood sugar and then followed by a crash. It gives us the, slow rise and slow fall, which is something that as athletes, we don't want to be going, hypoglycemic, whether or not we have diabetes or any sort of, trouble there. We don't want to be going hypoglycemic. It's going to harm our performance. So it kind of has a back ends effect on performance, just making sure that we're keeping things steady and kind of going on the right path, as opposed to just focusing on those big nutrients that we know have more of a direct effect. But it's just, one of those things that I'm trying to keep everybody healthy, and everybody should want to be, keeping themselves as healthy as possible. So, like you said, a lot of people are not even close to what they should be consuming. So I always say, let's start slowly. Let's get, one other meal. So, if someone was eating one salad a day, like, okay, let's continue with that. Let's get fiber in one other meal. Let's get it in, your dinner, in a snack, somewhere other than that one meal. So we're slowly increasing it just to, try and avoid the issue of going from no fiber to tons of fiber, which would lead to some significant GI issues that we all want to be avoiding. So definitely that slow increase and slow kind of steady steps in the right direction is where you want to go, specifically with that fiber. Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, like I just like that idea a lot, because like you said, the micronutrients too, that's another one that like you hardly hear anyone ever talk about, but they might not be as important for performance, but like you said, they're important for health. And I always think about, like, Dan John talks about, like, health is just the interplay of your organs. Like, how well is everything working together? Like, are you healthy? And performance has nothing to do with that. Like, you can see someone like David Wells who threw a perfect game and like was complete shit show of health. But on the opposite end, you can have someone who's in great health but can't perform to any level. So I think both are super important. And like how you said, like, if we go back to like that low carb setting, if you start cutting out grains and fruit because they're high carb, well, the problem is now you're losing a lot of micronutrients, you're losing a lot of fiber, and unless you're just eating tons of veggies at that point, which no one does.
Seems unlikely. Yeah.
Like you're probably missing out a lot. So now you're very focused on that performance, or very focused on the aesthetics of what comes from eating better, but you're forgetting the health aspect. And I think that gets missed in a lot of mainstream dieting. Yeah. Either aesthetics is like the number one thing, like just get as ripped as possible, and you can do that in a lot of ways that aren't necessarily healthy, or like I said, just load up on whatever and hopefully perform well. But you're worried about the health too, and like you said, like if you're healthier, theoretically you should perform better.
That's the thing, is that like you said that it doesn't really have any impact on performance. And it doesn't have a direct impact, but if you're deficient in iron, it's going to, decrease the amount of oxygen that's getting to your muscles, which means that your performance is not going to be as effective. That's more specifically for aerobic performance than most, but then, for strength athletes, because we're not really relying on energy systems that provide, that use oxygen to produce energy. But generally, if everything is working like it should be, we're getting all the nutrients, we're, consuming a variety of different foods, and we're meeting our caloric needs, then our energy systems, our organs are all going to be functioning as they should be, which means we're not going to have any of those negative side effects that might come if we were, missing something. So it might not have the direct impact of, directly performing, directly making us squat more, but it's going to remove the issues that might cause us to lift less, or have tougher training sessions or something like that. So it definitely is something that should be a bigger focus, like you said, in most people's diets.
Well, and I think it is. We're getting better, at least. I mean, you guys are still a little young for this, but like the idea of the fat power lifter, powerlifting for a long time was just get as big as humanly possible, whether that meant like, just dousing your pizza in olive oil and crushing McDonald's because you just needed calories to get big, because, getting big lifts big weights. And I get it, like mass moves mass, I get it. But like, at what point are you sacrificing your health in your life to be able to do something? And that goes, I bring up Jim Wendler a lot in this. Like Wendler talked about, when he squatted 1,000, and I think he benched like 675 or 700, something like that, and deadlift around the same. At that point, he was one of the strongest 275 guys around, but he said he needed oxygen to walk up to the monolift. And that's when he changed everything. And, that's when 5-3-1 really blossomed. Right. Yeah. That's how the Prowler became a big thing, because he wanted to get healthy. Now I know he doesn't always eat the healthiest. He still loves his nachos, but he said like he did start eating a lot better than he used to. And, if you go to powerlifting meets now, even the bigger classes are not fat, where like, 10, 15, 20 years ago, like a lot of the classes were just fat. But now, I mean, you got guys that are 264, 120 kilos that are lean.
Yeah.
And even some of the big dudes, even some of the super heavies are still like fairly lean at this point, which is like, so different
for a 350 plus pound guy. Like if you're maintaining some semblance of lean, like that's impressive.
Right. And then like what you're doing right now, at least, working with the Rays, same thing, like baseball was probably one of the slowest sports to kind of get with it with training and everything. Football was probably one of the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
And baseball for a lot of time, it was like, oh, just, play baseball, get better at baseball. As long as you're skilled enough, you can do it. Right. But now, like you look at some of the top level guys, the guys in the big leagues, and I'm sure you see them along the minors too, that are like just physical studs.
Oh, yeah.
And then happen to be able to, throw a baseball 100 miles per hour as well. But like,
yeah, I mean, I think the old mindset of, do whatever the hell you want off the field and then come on and play, that's kind of going by the wayside, and people are now focusing on the training, the nutrition, the recovery, the sleep, the mental skills. It's really a kind of a change in that mindset that's been there, for however long baseball's been around. And we're really kind of moving on to that new mindset and trying to focus on everything that we can control. So it's definitely very, very different than how it used to be.
Right. Which is like, I mean, you had said to me, like, how many teams 5 years ago had registered dietitians on the staff? And you said even this year, it's still not everyone, right?
I think every team has one, but there are not a whole lot of teams with two. They're starting to become more popular, but I don't think everybody's there. And the Rays are at 3 with myself now as of this year. So it's definitely there's actually, I know there's at least one team that I know that has a dietitian that travels with every single affiliate.
Well, and think about that. I mean, there's most teams have the big league team and then 5 or 6 affiliates. So you're talking 150 to 200 athletes to plus maybe one dietitian.
You have like the rookie league guys. So
right.
Yeah, you have a lot of guys.
Yeah, so it's baseball's finally kind of stepping up and getting a little bit better and trying to pick up on things. So that's good. I think, like I said, powerlifting is doing the same thing. It just people need to think about more than just performance. Syed, do you have anything? You just a pretty face today? Let me run this.
I'm in the middle of an acid trip right now.
I know.
But I'd say a question that I would have was, say you get an athlete for the first time. So what are some of the things that you're going to ask them or you're going to look for? And then based upon their goals, like how would you adjust, whether it be gaining weight, getting more lean, and how would you approach that?
So the first thing I would always do, whether it's with a baseball player, a power lifter, whoever it may be, I basically get a history. So that includes food history, which might just be a 24-hour recall, which is basically going through their past 24 hours if it reflects a normal day of eating, just so we can kind of see, okay, so this is what you've had in the last 24 hours. And most of the time I will then turn it to them and say, okay, what do you think can be improved here? Because I want to see, if they're able to say, I should be eating more vegetables here, I should be eating more protein here, I should be eating less protein here, then they're already, well on their way to adjusting things. And they just need some little tips and tricks as to how to adjust. Do they know what to do? Just in terms of, in order to implement it, they need some assistance, which that makes things very easy. Other things that I would do would be, obviously getting a medical history, making sure there's no issues there, or if there are issues that we are accounting for those when we're doing a plan. Making sure we get their goals and, where they want to be. If they want to gain weight or lose weight, obviously that's something I need to know. What their kind of attitudes and behaviors and beliefs about food are, because, you get somebody who comes in and they've been following a keto diet. They've been doing, full bore keto for a while now. You're probably not going to have them on a high carb diet the next day. So it's something that, okay, so I know this is what you've been doing. If they were receptive to my explanation of this is why I feel like we should start making some changes. I'm not going to, I would never I don't think I can picture a scenario where I would change things, overnight. It would always be slow changes so that they're not overwhelmed with things and then kind of throw it out the window and say, okay, I can't do this. This is not realistic. I'm done. So really, trying to focus on those small things and, okay, this one thing is what I want you to focus on this week, this improvement, and then we will build off of that in the future. And then another thing I think specifically, it really should be with everybody is seeing, if there's any history of any sort of disorder eating, whether it's, actual diagnosed eating disorder or concern or anxiety for, about specific nutrients. Like if you're, any high carb foods or pasta or starchy foods, if they make you nervous or, you're kind of apprehensive about eating too many of those, it's something to be aware of, because like I said, in that case, we're probably not going to have, a very high carb diet off the bat. We want to make sure that we understand the reason that we are consuming them, that they are, not going to harm us. They're going to help us. They're benefiting us. And then, slowly implementing them and making them, realize that, hey, this is not something I need to be afraid of, and really slowly building off of that, and not, like I said, not doing anything, doing a complete 180 and changing everything. But it's really a lot of the changes and what is done is kind of defined by what they come with and what their goals are. And you really just being kind of able to adjust and help them accomplish their goals. And if I feel like their goals are, unrealistic, or if they need some assistance with maybe some more specific goals, because we want everything as specific as possible. We don't want to say, I want to get big. I want to get bigger. Like, okay, what's your goal? What's your current weight? What's your goal weight? How are you going to do that? Are you going to what based on your current diet now and changes that we're going to discuss, how are we going to do that? Are we going to add another meal? Are we going to add 2 more snacks because you're not consuming anything between your 3 square meals a day? Are we going to, do a smoothie in the morning on your way to work because you're, skipping breakfast? So we're at least getting something in, some more calories. Just those kind of things. Really, like I said, it just depends on what they come with and what their goals are and what they're receptive to, what they're willing to do. Because, I can give somebody the perfect diet. If you eat everything like I write out here to the T, you will be, IPF world champion next year. Okay. But if it's not something that they're willing to do, or if it's with all foods that they hate, it's not going to happen. There's no point to it. So it's really taking, their preferences and what they are willing to work with and implementing that into the plan and going from there. That's kind of the really flexible part that always needs to be in the back of our mind, is that, we can, like I said, we can give you the perfect thing, but if it's not realistic and it's not sustainable, it means nothing. It's not going to help them. It's not going to help us. So.
But I think that's, I think that's really good. Cause it's all coaching psychology. It's stuff that, I deal with lifting all the time. Like, first thing I'll tell people is, like, when they do it, like a food log with you, don't lie. Because people all the time will tell you what you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, how do you make changes now? Like, there's got to be something that I don't know about because it's not working when
it looks like it's perfect. I'm like, okay,
right.
Well, I have nothing for you.
Yeah. When someone says to me, their max is this, and then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, I did that 3 years ago. But I programmed off of that current max and I killed it.
My back.
Yeah. But what you're talking about is, I think it's good because it's meeting the person halfway. You're not trying to just be like, no, it's my way or the highway. You're trying to say, okay, take what you do. We're making some small changes, and then build off of that. Build progression, have some success. When things start working, let's add more. Let's roll from there. Like, it's easier to have one goal and smash that and do really well, and then move on to the second one than to do 10 things at once.
Right. Yeah, it overwhelms, and it's not going to happen. So,
and it's going to fall apart. So I think, and like I said, I think a lot of people do know what they need to do. If they're going to give you their food log and you're going to be like, what do you think you can do differently? And they're going to be like, well, I probably shouldn't have done this or this. They have a pretty good idea. They just need to know. They need to know how to implement it. They need someone to be held accountable to, and they need some tips and tricks, because, like, sometimes, like, I'm a good example. Like, breakfast is not my thing. So, like, we've been doing smoothies lately because, like, it's easy, mm-hmm. Dump it in the blender and then just drink it. Otherwise, I'm just going to go to work, like, on a coffee.
Yeah.
the rest of the day, not as bad, but when I have a smoothie in the morning, the rest of the day is going to be set up a little bit better because I'm not starving by like 1 o'clock and then just willing to eat whatever I see. So I think that's a huge one. So I think, but like you said, like I like that mindset of like meeting them where they're at, because same idea. Like I'm a very big assistance-based coach for powerlifting. If you came from a truly SBD background and you haven't done assistance work, and I cut your work down like that and give you all assistance, you're probably gonna have a freak out and not want to do it. So they go hand in hand. We have to, like, this is something that's going to take some time. It's not a 1 month overhaul. It's something that we're trying to build over time that's going to be able to sustain for the long haul, and then things are just easier and like it just becomes second nature.
And that's what I mean. I feel like that's a common thing that we see with, especially the younger powerlifters, is that they want to, like I said, they want to be IPF world champion next year. It's not going to happen. You can squat 7 days a week. It's not going to happen. So if let's plan for 10 years down the road, you're healthy, you're competing at worlds. Like that's the mindset you need to have. It needs to be not the overnight mindset. It needs to be if I do this for 10, 15, 20 years, where am I then?
Right. Because when you're young, like, I mean, I was the same way playing baseball. Like I wanted everything right then because I wanted to be able to do the best I could. But now that I'm a little bit older, my priorities are different because, I have a family. I want to be around longer for my daughter. Like, I'm not thinking like, oh, like I wonder if I could throw 1 mile per hour harder by doing this stupid thing.
Right.
I think that's a huge thing that, I think a lot of people just need a little bit of mindset change. Like I said, that coaching psychology. So, we work well together. That's why we're on the same page. Syed, more, or are we going to kind of try to rein this in?
I mean, that's pretty much, you guys answered my questions throughout the whole thing. So good.
All right. So I'm going to say, just so we have one actionable thing, what would be one thing that you would think like that most people, when they come to you, what would you want them to try to change? I know this is hard because it's generalizing. I hate it, but
one thing came to mind. Like it's not going to be something that's specifically performance based, but basically what you mentioned earlier, what I tell everybody: eat more fiber. Like that is the I would say, I would say like 99% of people are not getting enough fiber, which means they're probably not getting enough. Nutrient and the micronutrients that come along with those nutrient dense foods, which means that they're likely to be deficient, or, when people are, I think, especially with powerlifters, if we're trying to stay within weight classes, a lot of people are really trying to overly restrict their caloric intake, which, might work for the weight that they see in the scale, but it doesn't work for making sure they're getting enough of those micronutrients and making sure that they are consuming enough of them, or their levels in their body are not sufficient. So if you're able to consume more fiber slowly, not increasing overnight, but if they're able to do that, they're likely to be getting more of those micronutrients and really just starting off with a healthy change, as opposed to, something that's going to be difficult to implement, or something that's going to take a long period of time. Just slowly, one meal a day for the next week, one more meal a day than usual, consume something with fiber, whether it's, something is throwing some spinach in your eggs in the morning. You're getting, it's not a huge amount at all, but you're getting something in that's going to help benefit you in the future.
It's nice. It's good. I think I made a post about veggies and fiber like yesterday.
You literally did. And
so do you have any things you want to shout out? Social media, business, anything?
How do we reach you?
How do you reach me? Well, I think, oh God, I don't know my Instagram name. I think it's Al Roth 1.
Yeah.
Someone checking that for me.
Multi-time national champion.
If not, it'll be in the description below. Whoa. YouTube jargon.
I don't have any of that.
We'll add all that in so people can actually find you. But
then
website.
There's my website is www.a-1nutrition.com, I believe.
Wow.
We'll double check. We'll check
that stuff. Dear Lord.
And your email, I guess.
Well, it would be the same. It would be the same Alex at A-1 Nutrition.
Who the hell's Alex?
Well, that's me. That's, official.
I guess when you work with a pro baseball team, you forget about the little stuff.
Oh, no.
3-time national champion.
Trust me, I was never called Alex. Well, no, a couple people call me Alex, but most people call me anything that's Al and then something else. One of our pitchers calls me Alvin. That's only Alvin.
That's fine, Albus.
Albus. I respond to anything that begins with AL.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Yeah, so whatever you want to call me. You want to send me a message on Instagram, pick a random name that begins with Al. Albatross is the one I'm most partial to.
Albatross, all right. Well, if anyone's watching this and they are looking for nutrition coaching, I'm obviously going to push our team dietitian here. So reach out to Al. Hopefully, we'll have Emily. Emily is a precision nutrition certified coach. She's also works with us in nutrition. Hopefully she'll be joining us on one of these someday. Otherwise, I think, hopefully we'll be able to do more of these and do a little bit more nutrition stuff other than just me talking all the time.
We do enjoy listening to you talk all the time, though.
I know. I talk a lot.
You do talk a lot. This is true.
All right. Thank you, Al.
Thank you.